This is a Ariston Splendide, I believe you say it, dryer. Had problems with it. It's a TVM63X. And we're having trouble with it. It's in a new to us coach that we've had for about a year and a half. It's a Miramar 34.2. And the dryer work, washer and dryer worked fine when on our first trip. We used it and it dried the clothes just fine. But this last trip we went out on, it seemed to be drying the clothes slowly or not drying them at all. And then it stopped completely. When we got back home, I took it out to check it, and there was a temperature limiting ECO up here. To get to it, you had to take the top off first. This panel had to come out, and this side panel had to come off. Might have been able to get it, reach down in there after taking this panel off. I'm not sure. Now that I know where it is and how it comes off, I probably could have done it with a pair of needle nose. But replacing that was not too bad. Lots of screws involved. You got to pay attention to where they go. Put it back together and plugged it in here with an extension cord and turned it on. Everything worked, except it didn't get hot. And what I found out was in the backside over here, there's the heat element has two more. One's a thermostat and one's a high limit cutout, and both of them are mounted right to the heat element, and that's located behind this panel right here, which comes off this way. And you could, if you used OEM parts, you could take this cover off, change those two devices without dismantling the dryer. Of course, unplug it and all that first. I didn't use OEM parts because they were really hard to get for this. Things made in England. And they were very expensive, like $60 for each one of those devices. And I used ones that were made for a Westinghouse dryer and adapted them. Had to do some cutting to adapt the sensors into the heat strip. Don't recommend doing that. I just did that. Saved. It's like $20 for all three of them on Amazon. Anyway, got that all done now. Got hot air coming out of there. 2 states hot air, depending on the button up front and what the timer tells it. Next came my concern as to what caused the problem of the overheating. Didn't want to just put it back in there and have it overheat again. And in checking things out, I found that it had been hooked up with this flex duct. And apparently what had happened, I've removed all of the outside stuff to get access. Probably don't need to do all that. What had happened was this was probably aligned something like this, and in driving down the road, this thing shifted, and I don't want to do it, but it crimped the duct because this unit moved back towards the back, and this corner went almost all the way back to the wall. This whole appliance down here was crooked in the opening. And it kinked this thing and cut the airflow off, which is what caused the overheat. Now, what I found is the washing machine is not secured in any way inside the compartment. This one wasn't. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be or it was done improperly, but this one just sits there. And then this piece of panel in Luan, which is about 1/4 inch, and the 2 little cleats on each side were I get a little light on the subject. This was screwed in there, There, like that. That was all it was holding the dryer in, just from the top, just pressing against it. So there weren't any screws or fasteners holding this equipment in. The two pieces were attached together. The dryer slides in back in and catches on this little tab here and locks the back down. And then it drops down in front of and behind this, and you put 3 screws in it. So the two pieces were attached, but that was it. There was nothing holding it other than that little piece. Well, needless to say, that didn't hold it in place going over the rough roads, and it shifted and cut off the ductwork. So then I proceeded to figure out a way to secure these things where they shouldn't move going down the road. And I didn't find any kits online, like the stack kit. That's online, this thing. But there wasn't any kits to secure it in the opening. Also, I checked set the opening alignment, and you can see how they're misaligned here by a few inches. This is where the dryer opening was going to align. I tried elbows. I tried boxes. The elbows were too far apart. I even bought one of these offset boxes that's adjustable. You can slide that, and but as you can see, it doesn't work real well. And when I set it up like this and set it to the back of the dryer and tested it on the ground out there on the floor of the coach, I'd say it reduced airflow probably 50%. They claim it's approved, but I just don't think I'd use it. So what I ended up with is just going back to the original metal flex, aluminum flex, because it will make that tight turn, and it will allow you to stretch it out and hook it up to the dryer. When you set the dryer in, you can reach in behind here and tighten the band up. So it can be banded there and banded at the back of the unit, so it shouldn't come loose. And then once I've got them strapped in place, and I'll check the airflow before I put the outside cover on and make sure I've got good airflow, then it should be good to go. But what I'll proceed to do here is show you how I block this in the next segment. I got the blocking installed here. Ran this, I think it's a 1x3, I think. Full length, same over here, full length. So it sits between the face frame and the outside wall, tight. And then I ran another 1x3 across the back, drilled 2 holes in the stacking bracket and ran screws into it like that. That secures the back of the dryer. And also had a block here to support this joint so the dryer can't push it backwards, if it comes loose. Could rock here a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. I think these 2 screws down on the front, I put 2 L brackets, a self-tapping screw and a wood screw, self-tapper and a wood screw. So you got two of those on the front. It's very sturdy. It's not going to go anywhere. And then when I stack the dryer, it'll secure here and on that clip. And I think we should be good to go. You can put this brace in without taking out the washer, which is something I wanted to avoid because I generally work by myself unless I get my neighbor to help me. And this washer is fairly heavy to get out, so couldn't do this without removing anything. Just about ready to install the dryer. Up here, the exterior hood and damper, the pipe from it stuck in about 2 inches this way. It was about 4 inches long and a 2-inch wall, so I cut that back a couple inches, maybe 2.5 inches, so I could attach this flex hose, get that connection back in the wall, out closer to the outside wall. And then I tightened it up and put a couple of screws in it to hold that clamp to make sure it didn't slip off, and then fed it back through from the outside. The reason I did that was to get this flex turning before it even leaves the wall. The way it was before, it had to come out 2 inches and then turn, and made this turn real tight. So anyway, that allowed me to move that back about 2 or 3 inches. To do that, I also had to, I took a Dremel tool and eased this out along here on the inside so that the flex could turn there without kinking it. And also had to make the outside hole slightly bigger, like maybe 1/8, to allow the hose clamp to pass through. So now we're ready to hook this up to the dryer and set it back in. Well, I got the dryer in. But I had to make a couple of changes. I had to take the flex back out that I had put in. It was too short, and it was real hard for me to hold this tipped out enough to reach in and hook the flex up at the same time by myself, and holding the dryer was more than my wife could handle. So what I did was I bought a new piece of flex and hooked it to the dryer first while it was sitting down on the floor, stretched out about 3 feet from the dryer out, so that it had been stretched all the way out, and fed that up, set the dryer up on the washer, fed the compressed end of the vent hose through the opening. I took the outsides back off, the vent hood back off again, and my wife was outside on a ladder, and she pulled it as I tipped the dryer back. She pulled on the dryer vent flex to take the slack out as we went. We did that slowly. I also tied a string around the electrical cord, draped it over the top here so that I could pull on it as I set it back, because one of the previous attempts I had pinched the cord in at the back trying to get it set into that tab on the rear. So that allowed me to pull on the string, keep the slack up so it didn't get pinched. So worked out real good. I just went out and cut the flex on the outside because I had about six or 7 feet hanging out there. And I'll put all that on the outside and then set it from the outside. But I could see into the back of the dryer, and it looks great. It's only probably about 12 inches of flex in there, and it's not compressed at all. Should work great. One of the other concerns I have here is I had to move this bracket about 1/4 of an inch this way towards the front because of the 2 screws I ran into that back bracket to secure the back of the washer. Obstructed this from sliding onto the tab all the way. So I had to move this about 1/4 of an inch this way, which was easy to do. But as I was just checking to make sure everything is nice and stable after I screwed it down, I noticed this. I don't know if that's visible in the video, but you can see there's quite a bit of movement there. And this bracket is just into the top of this washer apparently, and or at least it is now. So I think I'm going to see if I can find an L bracket and put one here and one here. That should tie this down. And one other thing I forgot to point out is where those clips were, I had to notch the that kick plate down there to allow it to snap on, and I'll have to do the same here and here. I'll have to cut a notch into it. I also noticed that there's 3 locking tabs on the front here. One's kind of hidden behind this plate. One goes here and one goes there. So when you snap the toe kick on this thing, it wasn't engaging here because it was hitting this plate. Now I could cut this plate down, but I think what I'm going to do is just cut that tab off. If I hadn't put this all together, I'd probably cut this tab off a little bit so that would lock in. But what I'll do is I'll just cut that clip off the cover to allow it to go back and set flush. If I have to, I'll put a screw in it, but I don't think I will. I added these angle brackets I had laying back in the my shed back there. Put two self tappers here and two wood screws here, and yeah, now it's rock solid. Shouldn't be a problem. Side to side is good too. All right, back inside, I've got all the panels on, kick plates, everything, all the blood cleaned off the cabinets, and everything's working good. I tried the dryer. It opens the damper on the outside cover fully all the way. Couldn't open it anymore, so it's good to go. Just have to put the doors back on and we'll be finished.